Iron Maiden is one of the biggest bands in rock history, but they didn't get so big without ruffling a few feathers. Their fame enveloped others, and they were in the limelight for so long that they unintentionally made it hard for other acts in the rock scene to reach stardom truly. Fame does come at a cost. Sometimes it's the chance to tour with other bands, but that's a price Iron Maiden weren't afraid to pay.
Yeah, well, he was quite... I mean, Ozzy's a lovely chap, right? Don't get me wrong.
From clashing egos to conflicting scheduling dates and even a difference in musical beliefs, there have been 8 bands that Iron Maiden have refused to tour. Starting with number 8, Twisted Sister. Iron Maiden and Twisted Sister had a very tumultuous relationship during the mid-80s. Iron Maiden were obviously the bigger band, but Twisted Sister felt like they weren't anybody's understudy, and they deserved much of the limelight as any other band, especially Iron Maiden. The irony about their relationship is that although Iron Maiden later stopped appearing in the same concerts as Twisted Sister, this wasn't always the case. Twisted Sister once opened for Iron Maiden at the Salt Palace in 1985. They were still on the come-up, and Iron Maiden were more established. This was something that they were reminded of by fans. During their performance, they performed their hit song, "We're Not Gonna Take It." It was a great song, but the fans were still cheering in anticipation for Iron Maiden. This was a slap to their face, and this really hurt their ego. Twisted Sister lead singer Dean Snyder didn't take this well as he stormed off the stage. Given that this was their first interaction with Iron Maiden, it seemed they had found a foe instead of a friend. But the tables would soon turn, but not in the way anyone would imagine. Twisted Sister kept their head and continued appearing at every concert they could. Before you know it, "We're Not Gonna Take It" became not only a hit song, but a rock anthem. It became so popular that when they appeared at concerts, fans would continue singing it long after they left the stage, and even during other people's performances. They had earned their stripes, and they weren't the small band that everybody thought they were. They were big, and now perhaps even too big, to perform alongside other bands if they weren't the closing act. During a European concert, Iron Maiden wanted Twisted Sister to perform, but as the closing act, and Twisted Sister knew exactly why Iron Maiden only wanted them performing last. But they weren't going to be pushed around like they were all those years back. This felt like the perfect opportunity to get back at Iron Maiden for the disrespect they faced in Salt Lake City. But it turns out that was the last time Twisted Sister and Iron Maiden ever shared a stage, because Twisted Sister didn't want to close the show and Iron Maiden wasn't going to let them play before them, so they never got the chance to play at the same concert again. What makes this whole relationship crazy is that Iron Maiden were once in Twisted Sister's shoes. And considering their past, you might even call them hypocrites, because they've done worse as the lesser act in a concert. And it's one of the reasons why it was hard to see them on tour with Twisted Sister. But Iron Maiden's feud with Twisted Sister wasn't anything crazy compared to the next one on the list. Which brings us to number 7, Judas Priest. They had been playing for over half a decade before Iron Maiden ever thought about becoming a band. But since both bands were both formed in the UK, Iron Maiden touring with a bigger and more recognizable band felt like a smart idea for them. They would gain a lot of exposure, get more fans, and learn the ropes from a more established British rock band. In fact, when Iron Maiden really hit the scene and going into the 80s, having them perform at the same concert with Judas Priest was something that many fans were looking forward to. It was like the old with the new, and them on tour together would be something that rock fans would live on to remember for a very, very long time. But there was a problem, a big one. Iron Maiden saw Judas Priest as rivals and not a band they could have a healthy relationship. They saw them as competition they could outplay, and they didn't try to hide this. Iron Maiden were supposed to play at the 1980 concert with Judas Priest as the headliner. They agreed to perform there, and rehearsals were already underway. But during one of the rehearsal sessions, Eddie Trunk recalled that one of the members of Iron Maiden said something along the lines of, "Yeah, we're gonna blow the bollocks off Priest." And their unfriendly demeanor during rehearsals did prove that this wasn't just banter, it was what they actually believed. But things were only gonna get worse. Newspapers had already published this, and this was the narrative that was circulating around the public, that Judas Priest were going to get outplayed by a younger band at their own concert. This left them infuriated, and they decided to pull the plug on Iron Maiden featuring in their concert. So in the case of Judas Priest, it wasn't that Iron Maiden refused to tour with them, but it was the other way around. But this was far from over. Judas Priest knew that with the narrative already out in the public, canceling Iron Maiden's act would only do more damage to their public image, so they just had to stomach things. But was it the right decision? At first, it seemed like even having Iron Maiden in the first place was their biggest mistake, but after the British metal concert, they were wrong. Their combined fan bases enjoyed each other's performances, and Iron Maiden didn't outplay them despite their worst fears. The two bands reconciled after the concert and went on to tour again. As much as this collaboration was delayed, it certainly wasn't denied. But sometimes some team-ups go sour. That's what happened between Iron Maiden and number 6, Guns N' Roses. These two bands shared the stage only for their paths to diverge sharply afterward. We're talking about why these two giants haven't toured together since their initial run, focusing on a particular incident involving Guns N' Roses frontman, Axl Rose. The year was 1988. Iron Maiden was riding high on the success of their epic Seventh Son album and embarked on a massive world tour. At various points on this tour, particularly in North America, a rapidly ascending band called Guns N' Roses, fresh off their groundbreaking Appetite for Destruction, was brought on as support. On paper, it was a dream lineup for hard rock and metal fans. However, not all went smoothly. The most infamous incident occurred on May 16, 1988, in Quebec City, Canada. According to multiple accounts, including a very candid one from Bruce Dickinson himself, Guns N' Roses was performing their opening set. A significant portion of the audience, being French-speaking Canadians, were reportedly speaking amongst themselves in French. Axl Rose, the famously volatile frontman, took issue with this. From the stage, he allegedly started making negative comments to the crowd about them speaking French, demanding they speak English. This behavior, directed at what was essentially Iron Maiden's audience, did not sit well with Bruce Dickinson. Years later, Dickinson publicly expressed his regret, stating, "I should have come on stage and given him a punch. How could he dare speak to my audience in that way? I always regretted not having done so." This incident, combined with Guns N' Roses' growing reputation for unreliability, made them a challenging touring partner. Iron Maiden, by contrast, has always been known for their professionalism, punctuality, and consistent, high-quality performances. So, while the 1988 tour was a fleeting glimpse of two iconic bands, Axl Rose's behavior and the differing professional approaches sealed their touring fate. But sometimes Iron Maiden didn't refuse to tour with bands because of animosity. Say hello to number 5, Led Zeppelin. They stood at the precipice of rock history, two titans poised to conquer the world. One, a mystical force, is already etched into the annals of legend. The other, a burgeoning power, is ready to unleash a new sonic assault. Yet, despite their monumental impact, their paths never truly converged in a way many fans might have dreamed. What kept these two iconic bands, Led Zeppelin and Iron Maiden, from sharing a stage, from delivering the ultimate double bill that would have shaken the very foundations of rock and roll? The answer, surprisingly, isn't rooted in rivalries or creative differences, but something far more fundamental. The harsh reality is that the very sands of time separated them, making such a monumental collaboration an impossibility. The truth lies not in what could have been, but in the distinct eras they each define. Maiden's self-titled debut album dropped in 1980, just as Zeppelin was making their final bow. As Zeppelin's star receded from the active touring firmament, Maiden's was just beginning its stratospheric ascent. Their definitive era, the one that saw them become global headliners and metal giants, was the 1980s. So, while the fantasy of a shared stage might forever tantalize, the simple, unvarnished truth is that these two juggernauts, each unparalleled in its own right, existed in different universes of time. And the payoff? A deeper appreciation for the unique trajectories that forged two of rock's most enduring legacies. It's sad that Iron Maiden never toured with some bands, especially number 4, the Rolling Stones. Could you imagine the raw energy? The swagger of Mick Jagger and Keith Richards sharing a stage with the majestic, theatrical presence of Bruce Dickinson and Steve Harris? It's a fantasy concert poster etched in the minds of millions. A dream co-headlining tour that seemingly, against all odds, never came to fruition. But why? Why didn't two of the biggest, most enduring rock acts in history, bands undeniably large enough to share top billing? On one side, you have the Rolling Stones, the quintessential rock and roll band. They emerged in the early 1960s, a blues-infused, rebellious force that defined an era. Their career spans over 6 decades, an incredible testament to their staying power and consistent output. They are, quite simply, rock royalty. Then there's Iron Maiden, the undisputed champions of heavy metal, bursting onto the scene in the late 1970s and truly dominating the 1980s. Their intricate musicianship, epic storytelling, and iconic mascot, Eddie, carved out a unique and fiercely loyal global fan base. These were two unstoppable forces, yet they operated in entirely different musical galaxies. The core reason for this missed opportunity lies in their distinct eras and, crucially, their musical identities. The Stones, while evolving, remain rooted in their blues and rhythm, blues foundations, a sound that, by the time Maiden hit their stride, was considered classic rock. Iron Maiden, conversely, were at the forefront of the new wave of British heavy metal, a heavier, faster, and often more complex genre that was a direct descendant, but also a deliberate departure from the sounds of the 60s and 70s. Ultimately, the lack of a shared tour isn't a tale of rivalry, but rather a testament to the diverse and ever-evolving landscape of rock music. Each carved out their own colossal legacy, defining their respective genres for generations. The payoff? The understanding that sometimes magic happens when giants stay true to their unique paths, leaving us to dream of the ultimate, impossible collaboration. As far as imagination is concerned, fans would also have to close their eyes to picture Iron Maiden with band number 3, AC/DC. Why have two titans of the genre, Iron Maiden and AC/DC, never embarked on a full, dedicated tour together? It seems like a no-brainer, right? Two of the biggest, most influential bands in rock history, both commanding legions of loyal fans. Imagine the sheer power of a joint tour. Yet, despite sharing stages at legendary festivals like Donington's Monsters of Rock, a full Iron Maiden and AC/DC tour has remained an elusive dream. So, what gives? Let's be clear, there's no known public beef or animosity between the bands. Unlike some other rock rivalries, Iron Maiden and AC/DC have generally shown respect for each other's work. The reasons are far more practical, revolving around headliner status, stylistic differences, and contrasting touring philosophies. First and foremost, both Iron Maiden and AC/DC are colossal headliners. We're talking stadium filling, arena packing, top-of-the-bill acts. Since the early 1980s, Iron Maiden primarily left their support act days behind, quickly ascending to headline status globally. AC/DC, likewise, has been a dominant headliner for even longer, especially after the monumental success of Back in Black. When you have two bands of this magnitude, the logistics and financial implications of a joint tour become incredibly complex. Who goes on last? How do you split the revenue? Neither band needs to support the other, and co-headlining arrangements are rare for acts of this immense size over extended periods. Beyond their shared hard rock or heavy metal label, there are significant stylistic differences. AC/DC is famously rooted in a raw, blues-infused, straightforward rock and roll sound, powerful riffs, driving rhythms, and anthemic choruses. Iron Maiden, on the other hand, is the epitome of epic, progressive, heavy metal, characterized by intricate guitar harmonies, complex song structures, and theatrical stage shows. While both are energetic, their musical DNA and live presentations are distinct, potentially risking alienating parts of their dedicated fan bases. Finally, their touring philosophies play a role. Iron Maiden is known for elaborate, themed tours, often transporting massive, custom-built stage sets across the world on their dedicated Ed Force One plane. Their tours are meticulously planned and span many months. AC/DC, while also putting on massive shows, typically focuses on a more streamlined, raw rock and roll experience, less dependent on intricate stage narratives. Coordinating two such elaborate and distinct touring machines would be an enormous logistical challenge, but sometimes logistics are the least of the problems. Band number 2, Limp Bizkit, never shared the stage with Iron Maiden for rather unfortunate but not tragic reasons. Iron Maiden defined the new wave of British heavy metal in the late 70s and early 80s, pioneering an epic, melodic, and often complex style of heavy metal. Their music is rooted in twin guitar harmonies, soaring operatic vocals, and historical or mythological lyrical themes. They represent a pure, unadulterated form of heavy metal. Limp Bizkit, on the other hand, exploded onto the scene in the late 90s at the height of the nu metal movement. Their sound is a fusion of heavy metal riffs with hip-hop beats, rap vocals, and a strong sense of irreverence and aggressive swagger. While they clearly draw from heavy music, their genre incorporates elements that are fundamentally different from Iron Maiden's traditional approach. They were part of a cultural shift in heavy music, intentionally positioning themselves against the more serious traditional metal bands. This genre difference directly translates to their fan bases. While there might be some overlap, the core demographic for a band like Iron Maiden is typically those who grew up with classic metal and appreciate its intricate musicianship and epic scope. Limp Bizkit's audience, especially during their peak, often gravitated towards a more rebellious, youth-driven culture that embraced the blending of genres in a more aggressive, yet often playful, attitude. Putting them on a full tour together might not have been the most effective way to appeal to either band's primary fan base, potentially leading to a disconnect in the audience experience. Finally, consider their career trajectories. By the time Limp Bizkit achieved mainstream success in the late 90s, Iron Maiden had already been a global headliner for nearly 2 decades. Iron Maiden rarely supports other acts. They've been the main event for most of their legendary career. Limp Bizkit also quickly rose to headliner status within the nu metal scene. Interestingly, there was a point where they were nearly on the same festival bill. Limp Bizkit was originally slated to headline the inaugural Download Festival in 2003 alongside Iron Maiden. However, Limp Bizkit pulled out and was replaced by Audioslave. While this was a specific festival booking and not a full tour, it highlights that even brief alignments could be subject to change. Ultimately, two bands operating at headlining levels from distinct subgenres with different fan appeal simply haven't had the logical or logistical incentive to embark on a joint tour. Sometimes it's not just the style but the message. Which brings us to the last band in this video, Green Day. In the sprawling landscape of rock music, some bands are defined by their rebellious spirit, others by their fantastical narratives. But what happens when two such giants, with seemingly disparate approaches, exist in the same musical universe but never truly collide? We're talking about the unlikeliest of non-pairings, Iron Maiden and Green Day. Forget any notions of a clash of ideologies or a battle of the bands. The reasons these two forces of nature never shared a tour are far more nuanced than a simple disagreement over political stances. It's a tale of timing, genre evolution, and the distinct paths carved by musical innovation. Imagine the sheer sonic contrast, the intricate galloping rhythms and soaring operatic vocals of Iron Maiden meeting the raw punk rock anthems and often overtly political lyrics of Green Day. On paper, it seems like a deliberate separation, perhaps due to Maiden's historical aversion to overt political statements in their music, preferring historical and mythological themes. But the truth is, while their lyrical content diverged, the primary barrier wasn't a philosophical one. It lies in the very eras they dominated and the audience they cultivated. The two bands simply operated within different musical ecosystems for most of their prime. Iron Maiden solidified their legacy as heavy metal titans through the 80s and continued their prolific career with unwavering dedication to their sound. Green Day, on the other hand, redefined punk for a new era, culminating in their politically charged rock opera years later. So the payoff isn't a dramatic rivalry, but rather the fascinating realization that some musical giants, despite their shared power to electrify audiences, are simply destined to inhabit parallel, yet equally impactful, dimensions of rock history. Their non-collaboration highlights the rich diversity and distinct evolutions within the rock genre itself. There you have it, bands that Iron Maiden refused to tour with. Which band do you wish they toured with more? And what reason for not touring shocked you the most? Let us know in the comment section.